Good morning, everybody. So thanks for joining. Today's topic is BurnerPRO applications, so let's get started. So first thing we're going to do is a little bit of meeting business. Same things as every week. We're going to just going to ask you all to keep your connection muted if possible. And second, if you have any questions during the presentation, you can type them into the chat and I'll try to work them in, or I'll do it at the end. And there's also going to be time at the end if there's anything that you had a question about during the presentation. So first, as an introduction, I'm going to play this little video that I pre-recorded about the BurnerPRO. The origin of the BurnerPRO was to be a drop-in replacement for the Siemens LFL flame safeguard control. The BurnerPRO takes a more modern approach because it is a microprocessor-based flame safeguard. But since it was designed to be a drop-in control, they can both fit into the same subbase. Whether this subbase is the LFL wiring base that was originally in the burner, or if it's a new BurnerPRO wiring base for a new BurnerPRO installation. The subbase is functionally the same, has the same terminals, and a lot of the timings between the two are the same because a lot of the BurnerPRO model timings are based around equivalent LFL model timings. One difference is the grounding. There's a grounding junction in the wiring base, these three terminals here, which are connected directly to the backplane through this link. And with the LFL, there was a copper strap that would come off of here that would brush against the bottom to provide the grounding. Now with the BurnerPRO, do it a little differently. The BurnerPRO has a grounding leash, which provides a little bit more positive connection. It'll connect to the grounding plane with the connector, but it also has a quick disconnect, so that if you need to remove it later, you don't have to have a screwdriver and actually unscrew it. Now both of them do fit into the same wiring base. It just pushes in. So it maintains a compact profile at only 4 inches by 4 inches on the wiring base. It provides a small footprint for any installation. All right, some of the features of the BurnerPRO is that it has a non-volatile lockout capability. That means that if there's a lockout on the BurnerPRO and the power is reset, the lockout will remain to be addressed the next time you power it up. So it doesn't lose it on a power cycle. That's what non-volatile means. It has a proof of fuel valve closure input or a fuel valve end switch. It has an airflow switch test input, meaning that it'll test that the airflow switch changes state when the burner's off. It has a run check feature, which allows the operator to stop the program sequence in different positions, such as purge, ignition. Often you'll stop at ignition to make adjustments to combustion, so you can use that while commissioning. It has both a remote and local lockout reset capability. So the local reset has a button. The remote reset can be a 120 volt input. Real-time internal diagnostics for added safety integrity, meaning that it checks the microprocessor continuously to make sure that the integrity is there in the internal circuits. It has Modbus for programming timings or remote monitoring. It has pre-programmed operational timings for quick changeout. Has built-in amplifiers for flame monitoring for UV, flame rod, or both simultaneously. And there's also a model with valve proving available. The sequence of the BurnerPRO: first, it accepts a call for heat from a completed recycle limit input. Then it initiates the burner sequence. When it does that, it checks the proof of closure switches first. Then it checks the normally closed and normally open positions of the airflow switch, first to make sure that it was off, then to make sure that it turned on when the blower output turned on. It handshakes with an external actuator if used for damper positioning. It has an economy, low fire, and high fire output, as well as an auto output. It has terminals for direct ignition, for piloted systems, for interrupted or intermittent. Has wiring options so that you can have no pre-purge, no post-purge, or no purge at all, if that fits your application. And the proof of closure check, the airflow switch check, and the actuator control can all be disabled with wiring jumpers if they don't fit your application. So here's a sequence diagram for the BurnerPRO. The first one here is without valve proving. It's a fairly typical sequence diagram. You can look through that and see when the inputs should be on, when the outputs will be turning on. There's also times listed here. On one of the next slides, we'll show you the timing chart. So how long each of these states persists depends on the timing you set. Here's a sequence diagram with valve proving. The diagram for with valve proving has two possible ways it could be laid out, so it shows them both here. The valve proving is shown at the end, but right here after the combustion air proof test or after shutdown is when the valve proving will occur, depending on the option you pick, if you want it to happen during pre-purge or have it happen during post-purge. Here's a list of those timings. So the 6 standard timings, S1 through S6, are listed here. So those are the different timings for those different intervals on the sequence chart. Custom timings are also available. With Modbus, you can set these timings to be anything you want to. So there is continuous flame monitoring with the UV scanner and or flame rod. It can be one or both at the same time. It can be either one or both at the same time. There's an alarm relay that is used to enunciate the presence of a lockout. Smart LEDs enunciate the burner sequence states as well as lockout codes. The smart LEDs can also be used to show the flame signal on demand in 20% increments, and I have an example of that coming up. The check mode can be used during commissioning, adjustment, and maintenance, and you can enter the check mode using the power key on the reset button on the control. And microprocessor-based control has continuous internal checking to ensure high safety integrity. So if there's any problem with the microprocessor, instead of continuing to run the way it is, it'll lock out. So here's the smart LEDs. It's going to go through the sequence, showing what how they will be illuminated. So here's a video going through the sequence.
When first powered, all the LEDs will flash as the control initializes. When the closed damper LED is on, that means the control is in standby. When the limit string is closed, the fan LED will come on, indicating the sequence has started. The open and closed damper LEDs will alternate, indicating the control is driving to the open position. Now that the control is in the open position, it is commencing its purge with the open damper. This will continue until it is complete. Now that the purge is complete, the LEDs will alternate again as the control drives to the ignition position. Now that it is in the ignition position, the ignition LED will come on and we can establish a flame. The blinking flame light indicates it is in PTFI. If I hold down the power button for greater than 3 seconds, it will enter the check mode. The status LED at the bottom will turn yellow, and the 5 LEDs in the middle will indicate the flame signal strength in increments of 20%. Right now, the 3 LEDs indicates a flame signal strength of 60%. If I move my scanner closer to my test flame, I can increase that to 80%. If I back it away, I can reduce it to 20%, 40%, or even to 20%. Now I am back up to 60%. If I want to continue my sequence, I take it out of check mode. I will resume PTFI with the blinking flame light. Now I am in MTFI, establishing main flame. And that is the auto LED, so now I am in auto and running as normal. Have established my flame successfully, and I am running in auto. Now if I remove my flame signal, I will quickly go into a flame failure lockout. The status LED will turn red at the bottom, and the condition of the other LEDs will indicate to me my fault code, my lockout condition. If we refer to the manual, we can see that having a fan, an auto, and an ignition LED shows that we had a flame loss in auto as our lockout code.
Okay, some of the scanner options we have for the BurnerPRO. First, we have the UV1AL, and this is a front-sighting UV scanner with a 1/2-inch MPT thread. Threads onto the sight pipe. It has an integrated cable attachment. It comes in either a 3 or 6 foot length. Now there's a disclaimer on the bottom of these 3 UV scanner slides that indicates that these are non-self-checking and should be only used in an application where you're going to cycle at least once every 24 hours. So that's the disclaimer for the UV scanners. The UV90L is a 90-degree sighting UV scanner. It allows you to use your own cable, and it provides via the field wire terminal block. There's also the UV5 series scanner, which is designed for front and 90-degree mounting, and it may allow the scanner to obtain a clearer view of the flame. The UV5 is a smaller scanner, and it provides a detachable 80-inch UL rated cable. Here's a couple of installations. The one on the left is the UV1AL. One on the right is the UV90L. So with the UV scanners, where possible, you want to obtain the burner manufacturer's instructions for mounting the scanner and position the scanner within 39 inches of the flame to be monitored. So you will select the scanner location that remains within the ambient temperature limits of the UV scanner. So the UV1AL and the UV90L have ambient temperature ratings of -40°C to +90°C. The UV5 is -20°C to 60°C. And for the UV1AL, you want to install the scanner on a 1/2-inch MPT pipe with rigidly fixed position so it doesn't move. So this video is on the wiring base of the BurnerPRO. So a little bit more information about the wiring base. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have a grounding junction with 3 terminals that does connect with this link directly to the back plane of the panel. So that is one grounding option. You can also connect it to another grounding point through one of these 3 terminals. The neutral is also linked between terminal 2 here through this link to these 3 terminals that provide 3 neutral junction points for any connection to any of the other outputs that go to the main fuel valves, ignition, pilot, etc. Since you have a lot of things that are going to need neutrals, that one little neutral terminal where it comes in may not be big enough, so you have the 3 here to provide the junction for the neutral. There's also 2 additional terminals, 31 and 32, that aren't used for anything that can be a junction for any external connection you might need to make. So at your discretion, you can use those terminals for a different junction point. Something some other OEMs and other users do as well is they remove this jumper from the neutral, and they may actually use these 3 as a junction point for something other than the neutral, and that's up to you as well as the user. So that's a little bit more about how the wiring base can be used. Okay, so here's the terminal designations on the wiring base. There's a couple of diagrams, one for without valve proving, one for with valve proving, and it lays out which terminals there are. Something of note is there are 2 fan output terminals. You can use one or both together, so you have 2 terminals available. And the terminals I was talking about looked like the audio lagged a little bit on the video. There's a terminal 31 and 32 that are unused junction points that you can use if you have multiple connections to make. These are fairly small terminals, so if you needed to connect 3 or 4 wires into one, you might want to use one of these unused junction points for that. Here's a wiring example for modulating burner with interrupted pilot, and this is one that does have valve proving. Something to show though on these diagrams, there's a couple, but I'll just point out one thing. The BurnerPRO allows you to connect multiple connections to the output terminals, and it doesn't have a lockout when you do that. So if you wanted to have, in this case, the 16, 17, 18, and 19, the ignition, pilot, main valve 1 and 2 all have their own individual connections. But if I look at one of the next wiring diagrams, you'll see in this case, direct ignition 17 and 18 are tied together. So this is actually pilot and main valve 1. If you want the sequence of those outputs to overlap, you can just connect them together. This is how you can achieve interrupted or intermittent pilot, direct ignition, etc. So in this case, intermittent pilot, we want the pilot to be on all the time. you connect 17 and 18 together because this is the first gas valve and the pilot valve outputs, and so then you'll have your intermittent pilot that way. And for zero purge, one of the options for the purge is that you can bypass the pre-purge, post-purge, or all the purge with wiring jumpers. So in this case, the green link is going to be no pre-purge. So if you want no pre-purge, you connect terminal 13 to 15. The blue link is no post-purge, that's 14 to 15. And no purge at all, you would connect terminal 4 to terminal 15. So as I mentioned at the beginning on the introduction, the BurnerPRO is a drop-in replacement for the Siemens LFL. So this means that the existing wiring base for an LFL can be retained since it is approved for use and it is functionally equivalent. So the only steps if you're going to be replacing an LFL are to select the proper timing for the BurnerPRO from the cross-reference chart on the right. So here are some BurnerPRO models listed, and this is the LFL models listed and the BurnerPRO equivalents for the same timings. So then you would remove the LFL from its base, remove the copper grounding spring, and you replace with the BurnerPRO grounding leash. And then if you're using a UV scanner, you'd remove it from terminals 22 and 23, and you'd replace it with a FireEye UV scanner that you want to use. But if you're using a flame rod, you can actually retain the flame rod. So that's all you need to do to retrofit a Siemens LFL with a BurnerPRO. Now, we also have replacement options for the Honeywell 7800, so I have another video to go over that. So I have here a Honeywell RM7895C, and this flame safeguard control is an on-off control, and it has an ultraviolet flame amplifier attached, and that's a separate part. It has a purge card attached for 90 seconds, so that's going to set your purge time. So if you want to have a flame rod and a UV with a RM7895, that's not possible. If you want to have a flame rod, you'd have to switch the amplifier card out to a rectification flame amplifier, remove this card. So that's two separate parts. The purge is always controlled by the card as well, so there's a purge timing card, there's another 90-second card, but that is a part that comes out and is replaced. And if you need Modbus, you're going to have to get a keyboard display module because the Modbus for the 7800 products comes out of the back of the keyboard display module. So if you need to have the option between UV or flame rod, you have to pick a specific model. You can't do both at the same time, which you can do with the BurnerPRO. And if you need Modbus, you have to get a keyboard display module. So you have to have all of these components in order to have Modbus, and if you want to have the choice between flame rod or UV. On the other hand, this BurnerPRO model, which is the Generation 3 BurnerPRO, and this particular model, MP, has valve proving. So if you don't want valve proving, you get the model that just ends in M. This has Modbus built in through the RJ45 connector Modbus port, and it has both the capability to detect UV and flame rod, either one or the other or both simultaneously. So you can actually use both at the same time, and you don't have to have two separate models if you want flame rod or UV because it's built into the main chassis. So there's a BurnerPRO model to replace most models of the Honeywell 7800 that use a UV scanner or flame rod, and there are many preset timings available to fit most applications, or user-defined timings that can be applied to any model using the config wizard for BurnerPRO software. So for Honeywell 7800 applications that use an infrared scanner, a UV self-checking scanner, or required an expanded annunciator, the BurnerLogix Flame Safeguard from FireEye is a great alternative for those applications. So we have on our website, we have a couple documents, FireEye BurnerPRO replacement options for Honeywell 7800 series, and FireEye BurnerLogix replacement options for Honeywell 7800 series that you can find on our website under the BurnerPRO or the BurnerLogix sections. So this video is about the wiring base adapter we make to make retrofitting a BurnerPRO onto a 7800 installation easier. We also have a wiring adapter for a Honeywell 7800. So here's a 7800L on a wiring base right now. So if it was wired, all we'd have to do to use our wiring base adapter would be to remove 7800 control and then to disconnect UV scanner that you would have connected. Now here is the wiring base adapter itself. Scoot this over for a second. So what this is got a BurnerPRO wiring base. It can be mounted right on top of here, or it can be mounted somewhere else. It's pre-wired. This is pre-wired to go right onto the Honeywell sub base. There's two models, one for the 7800, 7840, and one for the 7895 or 7897 that has some slightly different wiring. Then it just fits right on top of the sub base and pushes in. So now once you have this installed, then you can simply connect your BurnerPRO. You would connect the grounding leash, plug in your BurnerPRO, and there you have a conversion to use a BurnerPRO on the 7800 base. And again, it can go on top if you have the room for that, or it can go somewhere beside. And there's a different video you can watch showing the conversion of the BurnerPRO to the Honeywell wiring base. When you do the conversion, the only thing you're going to have to do is, if you had a UV scanner in this case, the 7027, you're going to have to unscrew that because you can't use that with the BurnerPRO. But what is convenient is the scanner for the BurnerPRO, the UV1AL. It has the same 1/2-inch thread, NPT thread, and will thread right into the same place. So it's very quick and easy to change the scanner out. Only difference is you're going to have a cord molded into the UV1AL, so you get a cord grip to make the connection into the panel. Other than that, it's going to be quick and easy to change the scanner, as well as adding the wiring base adapter. So we have two models of wiring base adapter. We have a model for applications that use the 7800, 7840, 7845 modulating controls. We also have another version for applications that use the 7895, 7897 on-off controls. And the difference here is the wiring between those two controls is slightly different on the sub base, so we have to have two wiring adapters to cover those two models. There are also 4 preset timings available that best match gas and oil uses for both on-off and modulating applications. And the timings can also be changed as needed using the config wizard for BurnerPRO software, so you don't have to use them exactly as they come. So for multi-burner applications, the BurnerPRO is also a great fit due to the small size and flexibility it provides with fewer parts and variations. Since there are only 2 models, with and without valve proving, all other options and timings can be changed with the config wizard for BurnerPRO software, or by the type of wiring connection that is made. Pre-purge, post-purge, or both can be skipped with a simple wiring connection. Using the BurnerPRO saves money since the overall package can be made smaller. If Modbus is used, this can also make the BurnerPRO much more economical, since both the Honeywell 7800, Siemens LME7 will require external devices to make Modbus available. For the LME7, that device would also require additional mounting space. The standard Modbus connection on the Generation 3 models is Modbus RTU via RS485. The physical connection is via an RJ45 connector, which is similar to an Ethernet. It's the same physically as an Ethernet connector. The Modbus connection uses pins 5 and 4 for Modbus, which are the 2 center pins. And you have baud rates available, 4 baud rates available, and parity is none with 8 data bits and 1 stop bit. If you want to connect multiple units via Modbus, this can be done using either an RJ45 splitter, which must be pin for pin, or you can use an ED610 communication breakout board. And if you use the ED610, we have ED580 cables that may be used to connect between the units. You can also use standard Cat5 cable if it conforms to the Modbus requirements for the application. These two methods can also be used in combination, so you could use an ED610 for the first unit so you can have terminals to connect to, and then use splitters after that to connect all the BurnerPROs together. We also have software that is available to configure timings and other options. A programming cable is used to initiate a special mode, which will allow changing of the parameters. And this software is called Config Wizard for BurnerPRO. And while programming, the unit will shut down to allow you to change the timings, and it will require a reset at the conclusion of programming. We have a tester, the BP500 tester, that allows demonstration or troubleshooting of a BurnerPRO control. It is portable and powered by a wall plug, and the flame signal is automated, so it allows you to go through the sequences and test the operation of the BurnerPRO for your application. So in conclusion, with a compact footprint and standard Modbus connectivity, the BurnerPRO is the most economical choice for a flame safeguard in a modern burner or multi-burner application. The versatility of the control also makes it perfect for users that would normally require multiple variations of a flame safeguard, potentially requiring less spare parts, reducing downtime as well. And the BurnerPRO is also perfect as a replacement control for other flame safeguards, whether as a direct drop-in replacement or using the adapter base. This allows an OEM to migrate to the BurnerPRO while being able to provide existing customers up-to-date replacements. So if anybody has any questions, please type them in the chat. If not, thanks for joining. And I'll follow up with a link to the YouTube video following today's presentation. And also on the YouTube channel, there are all the other videos, like the one I referenced about mounting the adapter. You can look through all the other videos and see what applies to you. So I do have a question from on the BurnerPRO. Once your program timing is locked in, once you program timing, is it locked in, or can you program multiple times? So no, you can reprogram the timings. I would have to check and see if you have a time limit as far as run hours before they're locked in. But until that would happen, you can program it multiple times if you need to make some adjustments. I do think at the 8-hour mark you are not able to change certain things anymore. Can you use a UV1A scanner? You cannot use a UV1A scanner because it is slightly different than the UV1AL scanner. So the UV1A scanner is what's considered a high voltage scanner. UV1AL, and the L stands for low voltage scanner, so they use slightly different voltages, so they're incompatible. They look the same on the outside, but they're slightly different. So thanks for those questions. Any other questions? Can you use a UV self-check? The BurnerPRO doesn't support UV self-check. If you need that for an application, we recommend looking at the BurnerLogix flame safeguard, which can work with a UV self-check scanner. All right, thanks again everyone for joining, and I'll send out the link following the video. Have a good rest of your day.